Hi everyone, welcome again. My name is Melanie Thorley from MJT Law. This is Chris DeSantana again from MJT Law, and with us we have a guest, James Cananda from James Dean Photography. Now, James has been running his firm for a decade now.
Yeah, 10, 11 years, somewhere around there.
Well, and at one point you had a secondary job, didn't you, or another business, and now it's a passive income.
Yeah, so it started off working in sort of like camera shops and that sort of thing, and then working on the side as a photographer, and then that essentially one grows bigger than the other.
It
and
morphs into it.
Something's got to go.
Today we're talking about the gig economy, and also we're also going to be talking about, affectionately we're going to call it a side hustle. So that means another job. So like a lot of us are now working jobs. Like we've got Uber drivers and who are bankers.
They're everywhere, yeah.
Right. This is a thing now, right?
Yeah.
Are we okay with this? I mean, what's the deal? How does it work, James? You've got two lives
I'm
here.
gonna be an absolute advocate for it because I totally believe in it. I think you've got I think there's a separation here as well. You've got very self-managed side jobs where things like Uber driving, air tasks, people that work in that sort of environment where they just choose when they take on jobs, choose when they want to do it.
Yeah.
And then you've got people that have other side jobs such as maybe working in a coffee shop or like I was working in a camera store.
So like a second job.
Yeah, where the hours are dictated perhaps by a roster or something like that.
Yeah.
So I think you've got two different ones, but I'm an advocate for both.
Yeah. Gig economy, here we come.
Get in there, get going with it all.
What about time management? As a business owner myself, pretty much all my time gets taken up with MJT Law. I can't imagine being an Uber driver in the evening or want to be. I mean, how does one get the motivation to get out there and do that second job?
I'd be interested in knowing how many people have a job that requires a lot of mental strain, let's say a professional service of some variety, as well as something that is a lot more, let's say, calming or easy, something like driving an Uber where it's just, hey, let's just accept the ride and drive there.
Yeah.
You turn the car
skill
off.
that you kind of readily,
There's even a map. You don't even have to think about where you're going.
Yeah, exactly. And you turn that car off, you hop out of it, and you don't actually have to think about it at all again. Whereas you've got jobs like, let's say, a lawyer as an example, where you leave the office, but do you ever leave the office?
Yeah.
So I don't know if on the time management side, I don't know if there's many people that are going to have two of those jobs.
Well, I suppose the issue comes back to, from an employer's sort of standpoint, they go, you should be devoting your time to your work. But you raise a kind of an interesting point where this kind of works, having a side hustle where you've got a job which has got very defined kind of hours.
Yeah.
So, if you finish work at 5, you start Uber at 5:30.
Yeah.
No issues there. What happens with a job where, you're right, like for a lawyer, where you might be in your Uber ride and you get a call from your partner and something's going on.
Work gets in the way of work.
And you kind of got that kind of counteracting duties. Who are you going to... And so let's think of a situation where there cannot be worked together.
The guy in the seat in the car wants you to give your attention to the road, and you're certainly not going to be talking to someone at work about work because of the confidentiality.
I was going to say, a little sidetrack there, but I don't think you can just start driving around Ubers talking about confidential information.
That is a really good offer.
It would be rather exciting. It'd be like one of those TV shows where they've got the camera in and they're just talking.
You say exciting, your insurer just has a heart attack.
Yeah.
I actually really like the concept.
Yeah.
Lawyer in Uber. The lawyer.
Off the cuff advice to each passenger that comes in. Do you have a legal problem?
I love
That's
it.
pipeline.
And I also love this concept of and please, all my clients out there, I do not do this. But I like the concept of talking about it.
Yeah.
Because in our job, we talk about it so little. We don't talk about our clients or their situations. And sometimes it just would be fun. And you see these sort of tell-all, taxi drivers who talk about their clients in the taxi and what they've been getting up to. And it's always fun. And there's always sensational cases that we don't have any at the moment. But there's always sensational cases that we come up with, and you just want to talk about them. And it'd be super fun to get people weighing in on the advice you give and all this. I mean,
especially people who don't understand the situation.
Or any of the law.
just forget the law, forget it's the fun of it. But I mean, obviously, completely inappropriate. It would never happen. So on and so forth.
Yeah.
But you can see how that might relax you, just kind of chatting all evening. From an employment law point of view, though, I just wonder how problematic this does get. Like, did you have any issues with trying to run your business and having a job at the same time?
I think I was quite fortunate that. So the start of my business was in wedding photography, and a lot of people are planning their weddings and emailing, and that's a lot of communication exists. Is always through email, almost never through phone.
Right.
Until the later stages that are quite close to the wedding.
Right.
And because it's primarily on weekends.
Yeah.
So I knew that the shop that I was working at the time was a Monday to Friday shop. I knew that my weekends were always going to be free. I'm working in a job where those circumstances where I need to just quickly go to the shop or quickly deal with something at work actually did not exist. And then because everything was primarily through email, I could deal with those on lunch breaks if it needed to be replied to through the day, or I could deal with it at night time when I was back at home behind the computer.
Okay, well, what about this scenario then? You are paid for 38 hours a week, you're a full-time employee, Monday to Friday, 8:30 to 5 p.m, office work as such. But you work a 4-day week, and you're paid for 5 days, but you only need to be in the office for 4 days. Do you go out and do a wedding on that day number 5?
I think in the circumstance like a wedding, I would say no, but I would still be taking work on the Friday. Like if I was doing more commercial based work, let's say headshots.
This is very controversial.
The reason
but yes.
the reason I say that is because it's something that can be rescheduled.
Okay.
As you can imagine, a wedding can't be rescheduled due to photographer availability 2 days out from it.
You've got 2 masters here. You've got your wedding and you've got your day job.
I think the core of everything is going to always come back to that flexibility as well.
Okay.
But yeah, so like I would be still taking on jobs.
Right.
As providing that, I would also be giving people that were going to be that Friday client notice that, look, you dress it up, look, it's unlikely that I'm going to have to cancel this or reschedule this, but there is a chance that does exist.
Okay. Chris, do you see any problems with this?
I do. I do see some problems. I mean, my personal take on it is I actually think a lot of the issues that having that second sort of job or that side hustle.
By the way, I think James's your opinion on this is probably the opinion of many people who have this issue. This is the right opinion. Honestly, I think yours is the norm opinion.
Yeah.
But from a legal standpoint, what are we talking about here?
Well, we're talking about there's a few problems. I mean, you've got some time theft issues, as in you are literally earning an income, or you're not doing a job.
Yeah.
Then let's just take this as a situation where you are, in fact, for example, looking at emails, which during your work time and things like maybe taking calls as well. Yeah. There's certainly time theft. There's probably also potentially, given what you're doing, a restraint issue that you are in fact working for a competitor or someone at the very same time.
Yeah.
There's probably also a potential from a reputational issue about depending on what your side hustle is.
Yeah.
And then bringing your principal employer into kind of disrepute, I would have thought.
It's really hard, isn't it? Because, James, this opinion of being able to do a job because the office isn't open on Friday, so why not find a side hustle to fill your time up?
It's hours available.
It's hours available and you've got time. Happy days. I don't think it works lawfully, but I don't know why. So, from a business owner's perspective, and, it comes up from time to time, people are at home and I need to bring them in. And I would expect everyone to come in, and because I pay them to come in, and happy days they come in. But what if I don't ask them, and I don't know, and it doesn't make any difference even if I did know, because I wasn't going to ask them to come in? I still feel like I'm paying them to be at work and not, because I'm paying them, now they're getting paid twice, and that's kind of how I see it. So I just wonder how as a community we can get over these hurdles because we've got the hurdle of it being unlawful, and to be honest, it's more than likely, people, that your employment contract with one or other of the jobs says that they have exclusivity while they're being paid to do that job. So there's a breach of contract issue. There is the general public concept that this is perfectly fine, and then you've got this business owner issue where we go, well, hang on here, you're getting paid twice. Why don't I just not pay you for the time that you were doing your other side hustle? And so how do we manage this as a community?
Well,
this is like,
I think
law hasn't caught up with first world problems, sort of thing.
It's the current laws, I think, are probably a little bit
Too
archaic.
archaic.
And I think employers should start potentially thinking about this a bit more laterally. About this isn't doom and gloom for them in its entirety. We are currently in a recession, I believe.
He's used the word recession.
Keyword.
Keyword.
We do not have any economists here. He does not believe we're in a recession. You know this concept, you use the word recession, we get a recession.
Yes. So pay rises are becoming ever the more kind of problematic.
Oh, yes. Yeah, okay.
There is a certain benefit to employers about their employees actually making a little bit of money on the side, because it means they're probably not going to knock on their door and say, pay me an extra 10 or else I'm walking.
Okay, yeah.
So when you think about that, I mean, a bit of flexibility to allow them to kind of earn that extra income might actually end up saving that employer in some of the money anyway.
I was going to say it could, from an employer point, is like perhaps going past and understanding why this person has a second job.
Okay.
Not.
Yep.
This person might have
Take a more holistic view of the
this person might have a
situation.
second job because they actually just love what they do, and it
But
gives
they
them
need
the
more
opportunity
money.
to do it. But they might not do it for the money. So for instance, I've got colleagues that just love to draw. They're artists, but they don't really care about making money from it. But they happen to make money from it.
Yeah. Quite often, the only way you can do the drawings is to sell them.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you don't get the
You're not
chance
getting the money back.
to have the people. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I can see how that could be a
Exactly.
problem.
So perhaps the employer needs to start thinking about why this person has a second job.
Okay.
If perhaps that person has a job because they have financial restrictions, or maybe they're poor with money, so maybe financial advice might be a better solution for the employer than to actually
Allow them to work as
them to have that second job.
Right. So goes back to what you just said. They might not ask for those pay rises, which the employer can't give, making the employer nervous they're going to ask for it, making the employee nervous for asking for it, causing a breakdown in the employment relationship, and instead encouraging an employment relationship that is more open and saying A, B, and C. Okay, I get it.
And
It's all weighing up.
And then, like, you've also got the other side where this person might have their primary job and then they've got their secondary job, but they actually want their secondary job, like what was happening for me as an example, to be their primary job. So I wanted to be a wedding photographer, but the industry, because it's seasonal and weekends, so divide the year by 2 and then wipe out 5 of those days
Yeah. Okay.
per week.
Okay.
It's actually unsustainable to just and I have to take my bookings approximately a year, 2 years in advance.
Yeah.
So you can imagine how quickly
you
it
need
builds.
another job in order to eat and sleep.
Exactly.
Okay, but just to throw a little bit of a spanner in that line of thinking, because I think you're probably right. A lot of people get that second job because they have a desire to make it their primary job.
Springboard effect.
But you've got some employers sitting here going, well, I'm giving you all this latitude. I'm giving you loyalty. I'm giving you the opportunity to earn money while I'm paying you somewhere else. And all you're doing is using it to leave me in the future. That doesn't feel nice for me. How do we get this
Transparency.
How do we get this right?
Transparency.
If the employee and the employer both understand what the roadmap looks like, then you can both plan for it. What if the employer has like a business that's growing or something like that, and they may potentially want to bring on another full-time staff member, but they need to bring that person from part-time to full-time. The person that wants to potentially leave and chooses this into a primary job could go
You might do this
do the other way. They could move to part-time. You could bring in a full-time employee. I think transparency is what's key there.
Yeah,
Because
okay.
as soon as there's a breakdown of communication, that's the root of a lot
Yeah.
of problems.
Yes, okay, I get that. But then, and I am obviously in this session the devil's advocate
Yeah.
here. It's easy for me to be that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we've got transparency. We've got an employee who says, I want to be a blah. Yeah. But I can't do that on my own. I need an income, and you give me time to do that. I really want to do it, and eventually I do want to be blah. But I say, look, that's not a problem, but look, give me a year or two so I can, get myself on my feet or whatever. And they don't, because their business picks up faster than they want. You've got all the benefit, and the employer has got all the detriment.
Mm-hmm.
And what that will cause is a once bitten, twice shy. They're never going to trust another person to do
Yeah.
this again. So how do we balance this?
They probably need to
Got a
get-
power balance here in some ways.
They probably just need to get more, probably proactive about it. I would have thought is, saying to this employee, I'm happy for you to kind of go and build your business, but on the other hand, I have this issue. What happens if you leave me in 2
Yeah.
months?
Yeah.
Think about it, put them on a contract. Think about, being a bit more rigid about it, and it comes back to that kind of transparency,
Right. So you're making it more
more formal.
So we're not giving the employee all the power here. We're saying, I will put you on a 2 month to 2 month to 2 month contract, and I can terminate that at the end of the 2 months, or you can terminate it. Okay, I get it. So there's less certainty for the employee to
I
go
think
off
the
and do
issues
what they
come
want.
here in all of this for both parties
Yeah.
is when, and we've certainly seen it, and I'm sure you have as well, James.
It's-
It's the secrecy which gets people.
Yeah, it's not
It's
just a
doing it
one-off.
on the side, and unfortunately, the name actually kind of lends
Yeah.
it. The
The
side hustle
Yes, indeed.
is, quite honestly, just being open about it.
Yeah.
And this is something that employees obviously valued enough to still be employed at that very point. And there's issues, but they can be worked through. And I mean, reminding the employee that there are still performance kind of requirements. You're still
Yeah.
required to do your job. You also, I don't think anyone can put it that you have to, when you're at work,
Yeah.
actually work there.
Yeah.
But just reminding them is probably, I mean, a lot of people might even think that they are still allowed to kind of look at those emails here and there or take a call here and there, but it becomes an issue.
I think if you're doing
Yeah,
it takes a lot of self-restraint, but they need the person with this side hustle needs to be doing that on their lunch break, because the lunch break is essentially your time,
That's right. It's non-payment time.
and
Yeah.
after hours is once again
Non-payment
your
time.
time.
Yeah.
It's the employer doesn't have control over what you're
Yeah.
doing in your own time. If you
No.
want to spend 6 hours a night playing
Yeah.
the Xbox, or if you want to spend 6 hours editing photos for a wedding,
That's right. I think we're not talking about the side hustle that has
It's-
nothing to do with the primary job. We're talking about the side hustle that seeps in
Yeah,
to
so-
primary job material.
probably quite a good example as well is it would have been about 6 years ago. I was running a studio here in Brisbane that was exactly what I was doing as the side hustle. Like my direct competitor was the person I was working for,
Right.
and they understood that, and they
Yeah.
knew what I was doing. And in our contract, it said that I would be photographing weddings and dealing with photos and everything like that full time with them, and I had to make myself available for 3 weddings per week.
Okay.
However, in the contract it said that I could still do 10 of my own weddings,
Right.
providing I gave them X amount of time prior to that wedding of notice.
Yeah.
So occasionally I'll get that phone call
Yeah.
that says, my photographer's just cancelled, my wedding's in 3 days, can you shoot it? It doesn't happen a lot, but it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to take those jobs on.
Yeah. Okay.
But when someone's booking a year in advance,
Yeah.
I was able to say to my employer,
You're able to manage.
this
those
is one of the
jobs.
days that I'm not allowed to, that I'm not able to be here.
Yeah.
And that's being that proactive type
Yeah.
of thing is really setting the boundaries
Yeah.
early.
Yeah.
And kind of
And the
going
key,
with
the
that.
key to that whole thing working was communication.
What about
Yeah.
well, if we use communication in that setting? I'm just thinking about a different way of dealing with this. Let's say you wanted to edit some photos while at work that you had done yourself. Is there a way to use a debit credit system in many ways? Like if you like for the Friday off, and that person is off doing a wedding, instead of or doing something for 2 or 3 hours, notifying your employer that you spent 2 or 3 hours doing something that earned you money, and therefore you don't get paid for those 2 or 3 hours. Does that make sense?
I think it just muddies the water quite quickly.
It does muddy the water, but I wonder.
Some jobs it might work for. Like, I'm not. Provided you're able to be that flexible with your work. I mean, if it's a job where you can kind of work easily after hours. I can see a situation where you can say I spent 2 hours editing photos during the day. I'll work the extra 2 hours, and it's very easily measured. At the end of the day, I mean, there's no real actual time theft, because I mean they're still deriving the benefit of, and then you still have all the performance issues. Kind of there.
What if you have something that's very, those jobs where nothing happens if the customer's not there?
You're
What are you
talking
doing?
about what happens if you've done all your work.
Yeah, essentially. And like, what if you're...
yes.
Let's say you're one of those mall...
That's come up recently with us.
Let's say you're a mall photographer.
None of my work has been compromised by me having my side hustle.
Where's your
Therefore,
loss?
what is the problem?
Yeah, so like...
Okay.
I'll create an example, which is you're a mall photographer. You're one of the people that stand there, waits for people to come up, and you'll take photos of their babies and whatnot. And your side hustle,
You've got
is
Santa
children
there.
photography.
Okay, but how do you differentiate between them taking a job for your work and taking a job for you, or do you just ask them to come in? You say, I'm going to be in the mall at this time.
No, I was more so thinking, you haven't had any parents come up to you for an hour.
Yeah.
You actually have nothing to do at this point, because you're not part of the editing team or anything. You're the photographer. You're only working when there's a baby there.
Yeah, you're like the Santa photo guy.
Yeah, so there's no babies here. I've got nothing to take photos of.
Can you
I
be
might
on
rip
your
out
phone,
my
kind of,
laptop and do some emails or do that edit real quickly.
Okay.
For your side hustle.
So we're setting aside this issue, and maybe what you're saying is employers should just suck it up or learn to grow up and go, this is not compromising your job. So just because they're earning a second more money during the time you're paying them doesn't mean they're not focusing on their work and getting everything done, and suck it up, princess. That's essentially what you're saying here?
Yeah, and I do think in reality that if you are editing your own photos while you're waiting for that next kid to come along for photos, at some point someone's taking advantage of somebody, and that's going to go bad.
So what you're saying is there needs to be balance.
Yeah, and you need to be, I think as the person with the side hustle, you need to be very strict on yourself. You need to always remember that you're actually being paid to be at this place.
Yeah.
You actually need to be present. You actually need to be doing your job.
Yeah.
Or else you won't have that job, and now your side hustle is your primary
Which
income.
leads it to those performance issues that you just mentioned.
Yeah, they still exist. I mean,
So do we know
doesn't go
anybody
away.
who does this? Do we know anybody at all? I'm going to put a line. Nobody's going to tell me if they're doing this. But do you have friends who are up to mischief in this way?
Look, I definitely know that people that have stretched it on their side hustles, and especially during recent times where there's a lot more work from home situations.
So do they have feelings of stress, extra stress when they're doing this, or do they think they're having a laugh with their employer? I mean, what's the benefit or detriment to this?
I'm not too sure how they're feeling about it.
Yeah. Give the lawyer answer. I'm sorry, I'm not there.
Haven't really had that discussion with them.
Yeah, okay. They're not saying to you, bloody hell, James, if I get caught, I'm fired.
No, I can imagine they're feeling pretty good about themselves being able to get both done at the same time, if I'm being completely honest.
Well, I think in light of, and I'm going to say current events in order to avoid certain trigger words, I think there is more so now than ever, there is less idea of loyalty. I don't think when someone has seen mass redundancies, their company is a little bit, how you going? They actually just don't care as much.
Okay, but what about the business that does? What do they care about you? I like to think I care about my staff.
Glares back at your camera. I have a question though, and this might not be a stat you know off the top of your head, but length of employment, I'm assuming, is shortened over the recent years, which would only confirm more that the whole loyalty thing's disappearing. Like, I don't hear. I had a friend recently that went on his long service leave, and everybody was, "Whoa, you've been there for 10 years."
Yeah.
But my dad's generation, everyone had their
It
long
was a regular,
service
yeah.
leave. Some of them are 15, 20 years into their employment.
Loyalty is
right,
kind of
length
not
of
there.
service.
It's not there like it used to be, and it goes back down to this idea of having a kind of side hustle and
Well, there's this view from people of my age and bigger and older, that the millennials, and I just don't necessarily agree with this concept anymore, but the millennials are not there for more than 2 to 4 years. If you get 4 years out of someone, oh my God, you've got a brilliant employee. If you've got 2 years, it's a good run.
yeah, it's crazy when you think about it. But yeah, go on.
And although I find that horrifying, it's probably true, James.
So can we change long service leave to 5 years then?
Oh, well.
That is a whole nother topic.
I couldn't comment on that.
Yep.
Your
yeah,
answer's
so-
probably no.
So what we're talking about here is there's a change in concept of what is a long-term employee and what isn't.
Yeah.
And I have noticed over the very few years I've been working that there's been a conceptual change here, but I think there's also been a conceptual change as a whole. Back in the day of your dad, people didn't have to. They didn't feel the need to go up and up and up and up and up.
Yeah.
Sticking to your job was a great idea, and I really like my job, and I just want that job, and I'm happy to do that job, or maybe the next job. But I don't have visions of being the CEO, and I think there's been a shift in that over years, and then because there's been a shift on both sides. Employees want more growth, and employers say, if you don't want growth, if you're not going up, you're going out. And there's this kind of, I'm going to say, and please don't write 1,000 letters, but the kind of Americanized concept of up or out.
Yeah.
And I think that's permeated in. So we've got employers saying, look, without you having a plan for your career path, you know, what's the point? And but the employee is saying, to get up, I need to go out to get those lateral moves to get more up.
Yeah.
Because I can make one jump, maybe two in a business, but I'm not going to get 3 or 4 until I move somewhere else and get that 1-2 jump there, and then I come across 1-2 jump.
Snakes and ladders.
Yeah. So maybe you're right. Maybe the world has changed.
And I don't think the side hustle thing's necessarily a new concept. You know, this is...
Okay.
You look back to... I think it was the early 2000s. I know that sounds like it should have only been weeks ago, but
So
it was,
it was
actually-
21
it
years
was
ago.
21 years ago. Yeah.
Don't quote me on this, but I think it was Brett Lee, the Australian cricketer, was working a part-time job in a suit store whilst being on the national Australian cricket team.
This was very popular for athletes, in fact.
Yeah,
All
when
the
they
New
were
Zealand,
semi-professional.
yeah,
Yeah.
all the New Zealand All Blacks weren't just All Blacks.
No,
they
they
were
were-
doing sales jobs. They were doing blah. They were doing
Yeah.
this. They were doing
And for a
that.
long time, a lot of them were farmers and rubbish
Yeah.
collectors
Yeah.
because
Yeah, 'cause that was
physically
their
fit
job.
guys.
Yeah, because that was their jobs at the time.
So, you know, like I think it's kind of always existed. Maybe it's just a little more prominent now because, like what you're saying, people want that growth. They want to be the CEO. They want to have on their Facebook, work that director, work that CEO.
When did, and we may not be able to answer this, but when did this idea
I'm sure we all have an opinion.
Yeah.
about having that, you know, basically prohibiting that second job, when did that kind of come in? Because
So-
you're right, I mean,
Yeah.
I can't imagine the All Blacks would have actually cared about that. When did they start caring?
And because it was famously, sports stars actually were paid terribly for a long time. And it wasn't actually you know, like I know now we're looking at sports stars getting paid $100 million every 5 years, but that's not been the case.
It's not just that. I mean, I know for a fact my grandfather, he was a mechanic, but he also used to sell fruit and vegetable on the weekends.
Yeah.
I can't imagine he was always at work.
I think the argument though there for the All Blacks and for the fruit salesman is you can't sell fruit while working a car. So you can't do both at the same time. You can't play rugby and also sell clothes at the same time. So you can't, and I think what I'm talking about is being at your job but working a different job while you're there.
You could bring up a whole new argument being, and this is almost against what I believe in, but mentally there. You could physically be somewhere.
Presenteeism.
This is also...
like if you were an Uber driver, lawyer extraordinaire, you might have a lot of car accidents because you're thinking about what your clients need the whole time.
Well,
and you're
yeah,
not
the presenteeism issue. I understand.
Like,
I have no problem with people having second jobs, third jobs, fourth jobs. What I do have really difficulty with is having a job and working the same one, a different job at the same time and earning money for both jobs at the same time. And I'm taking on board, you know, the language, what we've been talking about, you know, the openness, the transparency, the reasons why and all that, but I still have proper difficulty. I mean, if you put yourselves into an employer's shoes, if you were paying money for someone to help you, would you also want them to be earning work, doing something else at the same time you're paying them? And I think that's the crux of the issue here.
No.
I think it also comes down to you want the maximum. As an employer, you still want the maximum you can get for each dollar you spend within a business.
You do.
And if you're spending X amount per hour, you want
someone to be
that
focusing
money's
on.
worth per hour.
And if they're not focusing on their job, they're focusing on something else I can give them.
That comes back to what Chris was saying before with things like time theft. You know, you need to actually start.
I don't ever foresee a time where time theft will just be okay. I don't think in any situation here you can ever get away with true time theft.
Yeah.
Well, I think the more thing is how do you work together to make sure that doesn't happen?
Yeah.
And with that, how do you also work together to make sure that your performance is still there? Because that comes to presenteeism. Is I generally think if you're not present, your performance, it's going to come out.
Look,
Right.
as an
It's gonna
employer,
come
you can
out.
tell. You might not say something every
Yeah,
time, but you actually can tell.
And it would be difficult to hide from the employees.
It is.
that-
It is difficult to hide.
You
I
can
mean,
tell.
as an employee, you make choices about what you care about and what you don't care about, what the fights you're going to have and the fights you're not going to have. And some days you want the fight and some days you don't, and you just don't make an issue of it. So I don't think employees get away with as much as they think they do. I think employers
Just pick their battles.
pick their battles. It's like having kids, right? You pick the battles of the kids, of the thing that you want to fight about.
Yeah.
So I think I actually think there's already all the protections against the actual problems of having the second job or the side hustle. I just think prohibiting it full stop is actually just a bit of a lazy way of...
Right, so we need to...
Instead of dealing the issue, just...
So we need to walk into 2021, say the gig economy exists, people want more, they want more income, they want more ability to express themselves, they want more time, and the environment just doesn't lend itself to that sometimes, and we need to be more flexible in some ways. And it's not for everyone. I can tell you now, my husband is not interested in taking a second job. It's just not his thing.
Yeah.
And it's not for everyone. So you might not have anybody in your workforce that they want that to do. Sorry, they want to do that with. So we're talking about the odd person here, or is it going
That's
to
what's
become the
interesting.
norm in the future?
I think some industries...
Yeah.
I mean, it's not going to be the
It's an
majority, but
iceberg.
it's going to be
Coming
more
back
prevalent.
to photography again, you're gonna find it difficult to find somebody that works in a photography-based business and doesn't have an interest. Then you kind of want that person to have an interest in photography, and doesn't have an interest in photography
And it's
outside
similar,
of
like,
work.
if you go to a makeup store, I bet a fair whack of them are probably also...
So
selling
actually, we've
makeup,
got
guys in
all
doing
we've
your
got
makeup,
social
your
norms in
makeup art.
particular industries then, because there are not many lawyers who want to be photographers.
No.
But there's probably some. I have thought, ladies and gentlemen who are listening, that it would be lovely to be a flower delivery person. I just,
Okay.
Go on.
I just think it is just the most nicest job.
If you-
just wander around all day giving flowers to people who are going to smile at you when they receive them.
Yeah.
It's just beautiful.
Perhaps
thing.
that could be your weekend job.
But yeah, I just can't imagine
You
taking more time out of my day because it's already full.
You take it out of your afternoon. You can be after hours the
That's right.
flowers.
Abandon my workplace for a couple of hours to deliver.
Sorry,
flowers.
it's 5 o'clock. We need to leave.
Have
We've
a
got
little
flowers to be
spot
delivered.
in the side of my office that is a flower delivery company. I just thought it'd be a really nice
Yeah.
job because you, instead of getting people who are in conflict and are in, you know,
Stressful situations.
stressful situations,
and stuff like that, yeah.
what I'm getting is a smile.
Yeah.
What if you're like main supplier and the person that you do the actual deliveries for is like a funeral parlor? You are delivering flowers for the wrong reason, or the worst possible reason.
You could just, thanks, Chris. That wouldn't be
Just
my-
challenging some of these aspirations.
I'm going to work for a florist who only delivers flowers to people who want them.
Who have
Yeah,
newborn
perhaps-
babies.
Yeah, perhaps exclusively deal with people that check the this is a happy situation
Yeah.
checkbox on their website before they get delivered.
That's right.
Well, I mean, there
I'm
might
gonna
be some benefit, and you could arrive in full veil, black head to toe. You're essentially the Grim Reaper.
Okay, apart from being the Grim Reaper, I always thought it would be a nice job. Thanks, Chris, for ruining
What a derailing of subject.
That could potentially be a niche in the market that you may want to consider.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, I get what you mean. So we're talking about certain industries which it has a big impact. So
Yeah.
hairdressing, clothes stores, maybe photography, any kind of
Yeah.
anything that requires some sort of what do you call it? Imagination.
Yeah, I was going to say the creative industries are much
Creative
more
industry.
susceptible to this.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yours is similar to where you work selling the good, but then your side hustle is the service.
Okay, well, let's take it out of the creative industry. Let's put someone in as an office worker. They're a PA, but they're also a life coach.
So,
See, I see life coach. I don't know much about the industry. I'll be
Yeah,
honest.
I don't know
see-
anything about the industry either, but I
But
can
I
just
see
see
it.
it.
I
kind of-
definitely see that as an industry that is going to be much more popular for daytime midweek bookings
Yeah,
than weekend
after
stuff.
hours, yeah.
yeah. So we've got a person who works as a PA, so it's an office job, 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, and they're also a life coach. So how are you asking the employee to balance that, and how are we asking the employer to balance that?
I think it's like what we said before.
Yeah.
You get on the front foot from the very beginning. You set your boundaries and both have the employers every right to be stern with their boundaries.
So what are the boundaries? Because you said that you might not appreciate paying for someone to be with you and also do a job that they're getting paid to do at the same time. So if you're not comfortable with that, where's the middle ground for you? What would you like from that employee?
I think probably given because the PA may be taking phone calls that they probably can't get away with working during the day, irrespective of whether
Yeah.
there's kind of work coming in or work for them to do. But putting a boundary to say strictly these are your hours. After
5
do what you
o'clock
will.
hits.
Do what you will.
Okay, so
Answer your
these are
calls.
jobs outside work. Okay, so let's add a peculiarity to it. You pay them full time, but they have Tuesday afternoons and Thursday afternoons off because you are generally somewhere else doing speeches or whatever, so you don't need them to do PA work at that time. And they decide that although they're getting paid to be there and you're not there, they're going to do this other work. And I'm going to add another, because it's an office job, they're going to sit there and do their life coaching in that afternoons while you're not there at the office. Because
I'm gonna say it
because
comes-
it's easier.
A little while back, I mentioned about having that flexibility with your clients, making sure your clients understand that actually, whilst unlikely that you're going to have to work on that Thursday afternoon, that chance exists.
Yeah.
Every issue has come down to performance and transparency.
Okay. And you're okay with paying this PA to work in your office when you're not there on a different job?
I mean, I'm gonna put aside the resources issue. Let's just I don't know, assume that they've got their own laptop and that they're not
Okay.
using
So
your-
they're using their mobile phone and their own
they're doing
laptop.
their own internet,
Okay,
their
they're
own
sitting
laptop.
at your desk using your lighting and your air conditioning, but let's set that aside. Okay.
I think if you can measure their performance very clearly, then I wouldn't have an issue with it. So you can see if it's becoming an issue.
Probably not going to get a pay rise though, right?
Probably not.
Yeah, it's going to be
So
Probably not.
there's going to be some actual
But
balance.
this person's
Probably
now
not.
supplementing with their
Yeah.
side hustle.
Yeah. So this
they
goes
don't-
back to one of the first things you mentioned
Yeah.
about them. But actually, you
Yeah.
mentioned that people
Yeah.
take these side hustles to get because pay
Extra.
rises are not exactly coming forth.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't as an employee doing this expect a pay rise from your employer, surely. At this
I
point.
I think it's a little unreasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're probably pushing it a little bit.
Okay.
Yeah. You have to be a pretty exceptional employee at this stage, I think, to be
Yeah.
asking for, or incredibly underpaid. Maybe start
Yeah, I
asking
mean,
for like
like,
a award
I mean-
wage or something.
Okay, let's assume they're not underpaid. So
Yeah.
we wouldn't be expecting this employee to be expecting a pay rise at this point.
Probably not.
Yeah, but you'd be comfortable as long as they weren't asking for these extras.
Yeah, and as long as they sticking to the boundaries
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you know, put it in writing, do what you need to do, and their performance isn't waning,
Yeah.
and there's no kind of visual effects, then no, I probably wouldn't have an issue with
Yeah.
it.
Okay.
Again, resourcing, provided again the resources that they're using are not
Yeah.
extraordinarily expensive. Like, I mean, if you're thinking about some like mechanics and stuff do this, where they might use the shop.
Spray
Yeah.
painters, that
Or-
sort of thing.
That's actually expensive, and then I think they should supplement. They
Or in
should
a case
probably
where they
pay for
might
that.
use like shop provided tools, and
Yeah.
if a tool gets damaged,
Yeah.
you're now
This-
There's a certain kind of cost to that.
Yeah.
I don't think you were here at the time. This comes up quite a lot. You know, where like spray painters, where car mechanics have their side hustle and they start using the oil, they start
Yeah.
using the spray paint, they start using the wraps and that sort of thing, and it becomes a problem.
I was gonna say, are you starting to look at
Theft.
resource theft?
Yeah, I think you are.
Like you actually,
Yeah.
So you would like her to recover the paper that she uses when she uses the printer from time to time.
Yeah.
You know, just kind of balance
have,
it out.
have
in
some
way.
contributions there. I
Yeah.
think if you're just like the situation where you didn't know that she was there, kind of thing, or didn't know this person was there. Like they've come in, they've done their thing, they've left. They haven't made the place worse off in any way. Yeah, it's
I like it. I like
be
it as a
reasonable.
solution.
So much of this transparency, though, is about. I tend to think that we jump to it when there is that secrecy. Like you discover that they're working a second job, and you almost feel this lack of loyalty.
You do.
And you probably
do.
go to the worst. You actually probably think this person is
How
never working
long
with
have
you.
they been doing
You
this
know,
for?
you're probably also thinking, how good of a worker could they have been?
Yeah.
Like you might have think, oh well, the whole time they've been doing this, and they could have been a better, and who knows how much resources they've taken from you. You're probably worrying a little bit about confidentiality.
Well, there would be a level of stress. I'm really interested with our viewers out there. If you've got this situation, if you're working a second job, and we're not talking here about second jobs that are separate from each other. We're talking about jobs that intertwine.
Yeah, they
the
have that
photography,
overlap. Yeah.
do the thing, the PA who's also doing the coaching. So whether this is something happening to you and you're doing it and you're hiding it from your employer for whatever reason, no names please, or if you're the employer, it's happened to you, and either you've been incredibly incensed by it, you find it incredibly disloyal, or it's been okay, or it hasn't been, all these things to work out. I think you're right, it does depend. It depends on the employer and how they're feeling, their sensitivities to it, the employee, how they're doing it, whether there's a balance there, whether they're replacing their copy paper or they're just taking the piss.
Yeah.
And yeah, what that feels like for both parties, the expectation of pay rise as opposed to something else. You know, I think it's all worth thinking about. I think the gig economy is here to stay.
It's not going away. It needs to be managed.
it's so ingrained now that it's actually, I would say, near impossible to remove.
And side hustles are here to stay. Even if we talk about a side hustle as simple as doing micro trading, for instance, that encompasses a lot of people's lives. They're on it all the time doing A, B, and C. You could do that while you're an employee. Performance will be an issue, but you can see how that's a massive thing. You know, let's set aside the gambling, you know, problems and the addictions and so on and so forth, because that's just an issue. Without the issues, we've got side hustles all over the place in all sorts of shapes and sizes. I'm fascinated to find out how we're going to work with this in the future.
Because it's not going away, and then
This is
probably the practices, laws, procedures are probably not where they need to be in order to address them.
This is the new norm,
So
and we need to
figure it
start.
out.
We need to start figuring it out.
And especially with it becoming even more available, Uber, Airtasker, etc.
That's
Probably
right.
with your phone is probably one of the biggest kind of
Yeah.
figuring out is that you can actually do everything on your phone. You
Yeah.
can actually do your whole business out of your phone.
Yeah, this
Yeah.
is fascinating.
They are
stuff.
just small computers without a keyboard.
Yeah.
They really are small computers without a keyboard. It's definitely here to stay. And I know the ATO are interested in it because all these side hustles they want their money from it.
Well,
so on
we're
and
not
so
even
forth.
touching on the
So-
tax problems
So
with all this,
we've got all these, there's a whole menagerie of kind of everything that needs to get thought about in this. But I'm particularly interested in the employment relationship here. Thank you, James, for coming
No
in.
problem.
Thank you.
Thanks for
It's
having
been
me.
fascinating talking to you about this. Certainly from an outsider's perspective, loved it, and we had a great chat here today.
Thank you very
Good
much.
No problem.
Thank you everyone for watching, and next time we should be talking about
Something else.
Something else.
Something else.